Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, my mic was muted that whole time. Welcome to the show. If you missed what I originally said, I said this was another Guerrilla Sports off court. The Kings playing against the Denver Nuggets playing at home, and this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage. They are salary-based mortgage consultants that want to help you save some money, getting you a better interest rate, lowering your monthly payments. So head to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you save some money today. In just a bit, I will be joined by the one and the only Brandon Krisztal to talk a little bit about this win for the Denver Nuggets. It feels really good to say that. Really quick, I'm going to take to Twitter and say, come hang out. I already see some people in here. Shout out BM, shout out Polis, shout out Nino Slav, shout out Jay, shout out Frolatia. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing. DJ Seahawk. Hello, everybody. Welcome into another post-game live reaction show. I am your host for today, Liv Moods. And we've got some exciting stuff to talk about. If you saw the title of this show, I think you know how I'm currently feeling a little bit about Zeke Naji, okay? If you guys watched Off Court on Monday, I believe, I talked a little bit with Brandon Krisztal about the fact that Zeke Naji right now kind of playing the best defense out of all of the Denver Nuggets. And of course, we know the Denver Nuggets' weakness is their defense. I meant defense. I don't know if I said offense. I'm kind of all over the place, to be honest. I was super excited about that game. I felt like I started really slow. Hello, Marcel. Everybody, thank you guys so much. Hi from Vail. Hello, Vail. I love Vail. Such a beautiful place in Colorado. So I'm very jealous that you live there. But hello, hello. Zeke Naji, let's talk about that because that is the title of this show. And I want to get Brandon Krisztal's thoughts when he joins me in just a bit. But I want to ask you guys how you're feeling about Zeke. And I will totally just tuck my tail here for a second and say that I wasn't sure what the Zeke Naji contract was all about. You know, I was having a hard time wrapping my brain around the fact that we were holding on to him for so long. There's very clearly something that the Denver Nuggets saw out of Zeke Naji that was worth keeping him around. From my perspective, he clearly works very hard. He's got a lot of hustle. He plays with very high energy, which is exactly what this Nuggets team needs. But he plays well on both sides of the floor. He's good for some clutch threes. He plays very great defense. And he came off the bench tonight and was able to produce offensively, not just defensively for this Denver Nuggets team, but offensively as well, which again, you need both in the second unit. Quite frankly, you need both out of the starters. I do think our defense is where we struggled the very, very most. Zeke Naji tonight, 10-3-0. He was 1 of 3 from the three-point line, but 1 steal, 3 blocks, 0 turnovers. I love what we're getting out of Zeke Naji right now, and it's very clear there was a reason for hanging on to Zeke. We actually do have BK about to join us. Let me throw him up on the screen here. BK, how are you feeling? Number one, so happy to have you back for another post-game live reaction. It's been a while since we've had you here, so thank you for joining. We were just talking, I'm not sure if you saw the title of this show, A Public Zeke Naji Apology is what I titled it, because I do feel like I owe him a little bit of an apology. I've been very, very impressed with what he's been able to do for this Nuggets team. What was your reaction to watching him tonight? Because we chatted about it a little bit on Monday together.
Yeah, I think that obviously, first and foremost, the credit has to go to Zeke for sticking with, his plan, if you will. And I don't know if they really even had a defined plan, but I think both of us have said plenty. Why did they give him that 4-year extension? Now, it wasn't the biggest deal, but it's still $8 million a year on the books for a guy that really hadn't been healthy and hadn't contributed much.
Yeah.
And then because of the way this season has played out, he's obviously had to play more. And I say play more than the plan was, because the plan was for Deron Holmes to come in and take up most of Zeke's minutes, you would think, as the backup center. And obviously Zeke's more comfortable at the 4. We know that, but because Aaron Gordon's health has kept him on the bench, and then you throw Peyton Watson in there and all the other bumps and bruises along the way for teammates, Zeke's had to play a lot, and then he's had to start some, and has just played a lot more minutes with Joker than I think he ever has in his career. And so Joker is the ultimate, the rising tide is going to raise all boats type player. We get that. But the thing that's clear is that it's given Zeke more confidence that I can play with the best player in the world and I can contribute. And your point about on both ends, last Monday when I was at that game in Indianapolis, Zeke could have been the defensive player of the game. It went to Joker, but Zeke is very active on both ends of the floor.
Yes.
And so it's just fun to see his confidence grow. I tweeted it right before our eyes. It's exciting to see. I don't know if he's the difference in a playoff series one way or another, but I know that if you're getting positive minutes from him, just like, I guess, any bench player, but now you feel comfortable that you will get positive minutes, and that can only help.
Absolutely. And I want to use the word confidence that you just mentioned, because I actually had a thought. A couple games ago, I had this thought, and then I had it again tonight while watching. It does feel like, and I'm not saying it's one particular player or the other where I feel like this Nuggets team does play better basketball, but it does feel like when there are injuries to this roster, there is a sense of rising to the occasion by the other players, whether in the second unit or in the starting five. But more than that, it feels like you are getting more confident basketball out of the players that are healthy and are available to play. And if we're being honest, this is an assumption being made. We have not heard this through the grapevine. We have not heard this from a source. My assumption based off of watching this season and watching the pattern, which is these players play better. They seem more cohesive. They're playing tougher and harder and more confident basketball when you have an injury to either the second unit or the starting lineup. For example, tonight, Julian Strawther, we know, is going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks. He'll be out. We still had Aaron Gordon out as well. It does feel like there's a sense that these players play more confident. And I wonder, BK, and I'd love for you to weigh in on this. I wonder how much of that is because they know that Coach Malone is stubborn. We know Coach Malone struggles to let go of that 2023 championship run. He has a very deep loyalty to certain players on this team. And you have also mentioned on a show before that maybe the way Coach Malone is attached to players and or treats some players differently than others has created a little bit of disruption within the team. So maybe there's a sense that when Aaron Gordon's out, you know you're going to play. You know you're valuable. You know the team needs you. And it does make me wonder if there is players that at times feel insecure in their role, and so they don't always rise to the occasion. But when you have an Aaron Gordon out or no Julian Strawther, it forces a Zeke Naji to get more minutes, a Jalen Pickett to get more minutes, and they know that going into the game. So I think you get a better product out of them. And I just wonder what the correlation is there. I would love to be a fly on the wall in a practice setting or in a locker room to see if, when players go into these games, they know no AG, no Julian Strawther. It's my moment, because they know Coach Malone can be very stubborn with rotations. They know that even if Zeke Naji deserves minutes, you're going to keep an MPJ who's not making shots and not playing defense in a little longer than you probably should. So I wonder if some of that, do you feel, I just kind of rambled for a while, but do you feel like there's maybe a correlation there with the confidence we're seeing in players when another valuable player is out and not available?
Well, I think just what it's shown everybody, and I heard Michael Malone say this on the radio the other day, because I'd been wanting to ask him about a comment he had made a few weeks back when I was asking him about all of the different lineup changes. And I feel like it might have been the game right before the All-Star break where Russ was out, MPJ was out, obviously Peyton was out, and AG sat. So they all sat on that Wednesday, and I'm drawing a blank on who the opponent is right now. But they all sat, and I said, look, you're forced because of injury, or maybe a little bit of rest in that case, with Aaron Gordon or whatever it was, but you're forced because of injury to have to mix and match all these lineups and play guys that he wasn't necessarily planning on playing or would plan on playing if everyone's healthy. And he said, yeah, that it gives all those guys confidence. And what I wanted to ask him, and he did kind of touch on this on the radio, was that it has, because he didn't use the word confidence, but he said, I trust, I guess, I think might've been the word he used when he was talking to Scott Hastings and D-Mac and Tyler Columbus on his radio hit with those guys on Altitude Radio. He said that I trust that when I put them in, they're going to do the right things. And that's really the biggest thing is, I guess it works hand in hand. Zeke Naji has to have the confidence. Sure. Jalen Pickett has to have it. Hunter Tyson has to have it. Peyton Watson, it has to continue to grow. Julian Strawther, when he's in, has to have it. But Michael Malone has it in them, so that when Zeke Naji's in there, he's going to play 20 minutes. He's going to get you 10 points, play tough on defense, come up with some big boards, a big putback on his own miss, but step into a big three, that you're going to get that. Jalen Pickett's going to take and make some big shots. And so,
Yeah.
And handle the ball correctly, because the one thing you can't do is get out there and hurt your team. And Jalen
Right.
Pickett in his 20 minutes didn't turn the ball over, whereas Russell Westbrook had 4. Now I realize he played almost double that, but it feels like at times Russ can be a little careless for as good as he is. And so, yeah, I think that we will ultimately see this benefit them if everyone's healthy come playoff time.
Yeah.
And you have to, because of an injury, an in-game injury, hopefully nothing devastating, or because of foul trouble, have to call on one of these guys a little bit further down the bench, and or they become a bigger part of the plan. There's no reason to say Zeke Naji shouldn't be necessarily a part of the plan in the playoffs, maybe ahead of DeAndre Jordan at times.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you talk about how Malone has stated more than once, I trust the guys when it's their time, when it's their time to play. And it's that, I saw a comment here, that next man up mentality. Malone has that trust with his team, and he tells us that. But I do think sometimes his rotations contradict that a little bit, because you have a guy that's on fire, that's lighting it up, and then you pull him and you cut his momentum. So I think there's times where maybe the players are like, okay, I hear you. I understand that you do trust me, but how can I prove that to you if I'm not playing, right? And so that's where it's difficult, because when you do have a healthy Aaron Gordon, it's a no-brainer that you want to play his body as long as his body allows. If it's a close game or it's against a tough team, that obviously makes sense. But I think sometimes Coach Malone's rotations and his strategies and his game plans contradict the trust that he says he has for some of these guys in the second unit. So I think the injuries kind of force Malone's hand, because he doesn't have anybody to play. If Aaron Gordon's out, you've got to put in, and we just had Peyton Watson out as well. That combination is going to force Jalen Pickett and Zeke Naji to get more minutes on the floor. So sometimes I think it's forced upon Coach Malone, and I'd like to see him sometimes do that on his own, injury or not. If Russ is turning the ball over too much as we love Russ, you don't play him. You make these in-game adjustments and strategic moves that benefit this team. There was actually a late game sub where it was getting a little close. I think they got it within 3, the Kings, towards the end there, where MPJ got pulled out. And he actually looked pretty frustrated when he was walking to the bench. But, when you want to win basketball games, you got to have your best guys on the floor. And it was very clear the impact that Zeke Naji had on the floor tonight on both sides. He was playing really great defensively, and he was able to come off of the bench and give the Nuggets 10 points, which really could have been the difference maker in this game. Zeke Naji really kind of has been playing like an X factor, which will come up huge for this Denver Nuggets team down the road. I want to ask you another question about Coach Malone. And actually, I'm going to skip the Coach Malone. We'll give Coach Malone a breather for a second. We know he's actually talking right now in Ball Arena. We're going to hopefully try to pull some of those clips for you guys so you can hear what he's got to say after this win. But if not, they will be available on the Guerrilla Sports YouTube. I do want to ask you a little bit about, we know officiating can be tough. We know in this league, officiating is not always perfect. It is not always seamless. But 4-0, the coaches were tonight on challenges. And I think anyone that watches the Denver Nuggets consistently knows I will say shout out to my bestie, Ashley Nicole Moss, who works for CBS. She's an absolute star and she is phenomenal. She is a Knicks fan. She's actually team SGA for MVP over Nikola Jokic. But even she has texted me more than once this season and said, is Jokic going to get a call? I mean, my God, this is out of control. So Nuggets fans were pretty used to this. We've seen it time after time. BK, is it I know it's a large statement. Is Nikola Jokic one of the most disrespected MVPs ever?
It can feel like that. The only
For
reason
sure.
I'm going to I don't know how to quantify it against other MVPs. I don't watch Giannis play every night, so maybe we should ask Shelby
Correct.
Harris. And
Correct.
so I kind of always go to the Joe Buck thing, and it's not just Joe Buck. He's just kind of the loudest about it and has no problem interacting on Twitter, where you just assume that everyone hates your team. These announcers hate our team. Phil Simms hates the Broncos, right? Whatever it may be. Oh, the refs hate Joker, and so he never gets calls. We've certainly seen Joker get some calls at times, and it might be even make up calls in a game because they missed one. Ed Malloy's probably done more games than just about anybody that Joker's played in because he's been reffing for so long. And
Right.
so, and Ed Malloy's the guy number 14 that you saw talking into the mic if you were watching the game on TV, and he's been around forever. And so it's frustrating when you see him just missing calls. And to the point about the 4-0 against the challenge, obviously when they wanted to challenge, it showed that the tape was right and they get it wrong. And there's human error. I just think that it's easy when your favorite team or your favorite player isn't necessarily getting calls you think they should to say that they're disrespected.
Of
But
course.
if we were going to, there's got to be the one thing we know about the NBA is there's more and more data every day. By the way, do you prefer data or data? Because I go back and forth in my head.
It depends on the context that I'm using the word. I change it.
I feel like I'd say data more than not. Like I'll say data breach. Not that there's one, or
Okay, yeah.
whatever, or secured data.
I think I lean more towards data, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like
but I
used
use
to.
it interchangeably. I really do.
Yeah, that is one of those words where, unlike February or February, you're not necessarily pronouncing it wrong because I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. It's a kind of a personal preference. We never even got into poinsettia or poinsettia, but we'll save that for next holiday season.
I was going to say we can definitely save that, or we could save it for the next off-court show that we do together. We'll dive into all that.
But there are certainly times where it feels like Joker is just not getting the same whistle that Kobe got, that LeBron gets, that Kevin Durant might get, that other players get. I don't watch enough OKC games either to say that SGA is or isn't. And now SGA hasn't won an MVP. He likely
right. I was going to say he's not won yet. So
he might win one this year. He certainly is the favorite, and it's not going to surprise anyone. Although we should get into this a little bit, and I don't know how we pull it up here. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow, or I'll at least send it to you to do on off court. There's a new ESPN metric that's out that is somehow quantifying offense and defense. And so I'm trying to take you in a completely different direction. But I tweeted about it because if it's an ESPN thing, sort of like when they invented their total QBR on like quarterback rating, that like factors in how you play later in a game. So they have this new metric that is called it's a catch-all metric that takes offense, defense, and then somehow spits it out. So I'm going to just hold this up to the camera and you can kind of see. So it's got players, red is offense, green is defense, and then gray is the total. Well, Joker, when you add it up, is 426.61. His offense is 365. His defense is 61. Second place is SGA, whose offense is still 50 behind Joker at 309. And then his defense is 30 something behind Joker. So 347. And then after him, it drops to 202 for Cat and 183 for Tatum and 182.7 for Şengün. So Joker, by ESPN's new metric, is 70, almost 80 points better than 79 points better than SGA. And so I'm just going to be fascinated to see when Kendrick Perkins is shown this graphic on ESPN, on ABC, on the afternoon basketball show with Malika, whatever it may be. And he's going to have to respond to it because we saw where Perk has got his Joker hit out again and how Nuggets hate as well, or Nuggets I would say dislike. He's just saying the Nuggets aren't a real contender. And if they putz around the way they did for most of this game, and I get that DeMar DeRozan's a great player, may end up in the Hall of Fame, I don't know. And Zach LaVine was great late. But they had no business being down in this game the way they were throughout the game. And they had a really good fourth quarter. I had people texting me about, oh, what a great comeback or what a gritty win. I was like, they did it to themselves. It is a team over 500.
They typically do, mix. Sadly.
So, but when you see that metric, you're like, oh, here's ESPN that has no dog in the fight necessarily.
Right.
That comes up with this new way to quantify offense and defensive efficiency and impact. And Joker is head and shoulders above the next guy, which is SGA. And then even greater, the gap between him to Cat, who's third, or Tatum, who's fourth.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask, let's talk a little bit about Nikola Jokic. As phenomenal as he is, there have been some frustrations on my end for sure in his defensive effort. Even if the numbers say one thing, the eye test of Jokic's defense can be exceptionally, exceptionally frustrating at times. I want to talk, however, about the offense, because what we saw against the Lakers, and I felt like we also saw it against the Celtics, was Teams are finding ways to crowd the paint and force this Nuggets team to shoot three-pointers. And that's not really the game they're the most comfortable playing. I want to ask a little bit about what is the strategy, BK, when these defenses start to double and triple team Nikola Jokic and swallow him up. And we know this Nuggets team is not super, super reliable from the three-point line. What it feels like right now to me, and I know there are so many different layers to coaching in the NBA, something I have never done and never will do. So I am
Well, you
speaking,
don't think you will, I guess. You can't predict the
never
future.
say never in this life. But as far as I'm, predicting my future, I don't think it's in the cards for me. However, right now it does feel like Coach Malone's game plan is Jokic, solve the problem. There
Well,
may be games against tough opponents where Jokic cannot just solve the problem. Again, we see in non-Jokic minutes, we see when the game gets tight and when the game gets close, Jokic really does become the person that you really hope has the ball in their hands in the last 5 minutes of the game so that the Nuggets can get back in this. To your point, the Nuggets did kind of do themselves some harm in allowing this game to even be close and being down to a team like the Kings. And let me not sugarcoat it, the Kings have a lot of talent. I kept watching this game going, that's not a team that I would love to meet in a 7-game series. They've got a lot of talent on that team. What I find to be worrisome in this moment, knowing that teams are going to prioritize shutting Jokic down. That has to be your game plan if you're facing the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets, 21 games left in this season. 15 of those are against teams that are at or above 500. It is not going to get easier from here. So when you have these defenses that find answers for Nikola Jokic, what should Coach Malone's strategy be at that point? Because right now, I think the most clear strategy that Nuggets fans can see unfold when the Denver Nuggets play is Jokic. That is the strategy. Jokic is the best player in the world. We talk about it all the time. When you've got the best player in the world, you're good for some wins. Every single time, it doesn't matter who you're playing. But what becomes the strategy when teams find an answer for Nikola Jokic?
well, I think the strategy has to remain that Joker's the focal point, and the reason you push back against the way the Lakers played, or even the Celtics the other day, or what they were doing with Jake LaRavia, who I just learned about tonight. he's
Yeah,
not
he
on
used
my
to be a Grizzly.
he's not on my fantasy team. Or a combo of he and Valachunas, whatever it's going to be. But you're going to throw a bunch of stuff at him. Is in a 7-game series, Joker's gonna pass the test. He's gonna solve the problem
Yep.
or problems, but he has to have help. Just like every great player has to have help.
Of course.
And for as great as Michael Jordan was, we can certainly channel or recall the John Paxson knocking down a three, the big three Steve Kerr hits, as well as other great plays, but plays around MJ for as great as he was. And we could go down this list for everybody. The Kyrie Irving shot that he gets the pass from LeBron when the Cavs beat the Warriors, Ray Allen in the corner, all of it still helps LeBron win a championship, helps MJ win a championship, whatever it may be. And so I'm always going to trust Joker, and that's, I think, the right approach. And I think that's why Michael Malone looks at everything through that prism as well, and is constantly talking to Nikola about what's going to work. But he has to have help, which means Jamal Murray has to live up to the billing. He has to show why he's getting paid $208 million now over the next 4 years. MPJ has to show why he's the third highest paid guy. He'll take the 10 or 12 rebounds tonight, but 13 points isn't really cutting it. 1 for 7 from 3, especially the one in transition where it was so bad that Russ could have actually caught it under the basket, but he didn't expect it to not even catch the rim. It was pretty maddening in that stretch towards the end of the third and early in the fourth, where they would get close and then shoot themselves further away from the Kings. But I think that seeing stuff like you've seen from the Lakers, from these other teams, this isn't apples to apples, and we finally saw Vic Fangio beat Patrick Mahomes. He was 0 for 8. But you have to go all the way back to when the Bears played the Chiefs, Vic's last year there before he became the Broncos head coach. And he basically said, we're going to play a cover 2 shell, and you're going to have to beat us underneath. Well, he was 0-8 against Patrick until the Super Bowl. And also we know how bad the O-line was for the Chiefs. So the teammates matter. But the the riddle was still solved by Patrick against all these teams that copied this defense. So you can copy the defense. You have to have the right guys, or it's not going to matter anyway. And if his teammates are just doing their jobs, not even doing more, not, oh, you have to pick Joker up because he's not touching the ball as much. When he does have the ball and gets it to you, you got to score. And if he doesn't get the ball because of how they're guarding him, you have to be able to create offense that doesn't involve it.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. That's such a great point that you just made. It's not about doing more, because I actually think that's sometimes where the Nuggets go wrong. When Russ does too much, it's detrimental to the team. When Jamal does too much, it can be detrimental to the team. When MPJ does too much, it can be detrimental to the team. But it really is going to be a matter of holding that supporting cast around Nikola Jokic very, very accountable. Obviously, we know Aaron Gordon has missed a large chunk of this season due to injury, and that is something that is completely out of his and our control. But when he does return, and if he is healthy for the playoffs, the expectations are going to be very high for what he's able to do to support Nikola Jokic when the defenses are prioritizing Jokic in a 7-game series. Now, before Aaron Gordon was out with injury again, we actually saw Aaron Gordon with some knocking down some threes and playing really great offensively and defensively. And that was really great to see. I think right now, my main frustration is MPJ. We see these ebbs and flows, of course, from Jamal Murray. We've seen it all season long. But Michael Porter Jr., there is just, like you said, 13 points is just not going to cut it. It's really, really not, especially if, worst case scenario, Jokic is being triple teamed in the playoffs and there is no answer for him, or there is an answer for him. There's no way for him to find a responding answer to what is happening. And you've got to have guys like MPJ. It's not enough to have 10 from Zeke off the bench. You've now lost Julian Strother, who we know can produce offensively off of the bench. So it really is going to be now, I'm going to have to hold MPJ to the same scrutiny that I held Jamal Murray at one point. 13 points, it's just not enough. It's just not.
And he only took 13 shots. I say only. Your point total can never match your shot total. It's, just a pretty simple equation. He's 5 of 13. And again, the 1 of 7. If he makes 2 more shots, 2 more threes, then all of a sudden he's 3 of 7, which is still below 50%, but right around his average.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 19 points, or he just gets another bucket and another 3. So he's 2 for 7, which is well below his average, and just gets another layup, a putback, whatever it may be. And when you have 12 rebounds, obviously 10 of them on defense, but 2 on offense, you've got to just continue to work hard. That's 18 points. Do you want 18 and 12 from him? I think you'd take 18 and 12 on paper, but the 18 to me is as important as the 12, if not more, because he keeps the defense honest, and he's on the floor with Joker so much.
Right.
And so he's the one that is going to be getting looks, especially if Joker and Jamal are both dialed in. Now, if we're going to use past performance as any kind of predictor of what may happen, and I know that that's a dangerous thing to do in any sport.
It can be, for sure.
do get older, although averages are averages, and performance, Jimmy Butler, we expect, is going to be better in the playoffs with Golden State just because he has been. And so by that same logic, Jamal Murray is going to be a bigger contributor in the playoffs consistently. And I know he finishes with 24 tonight, 2 of 6 from 3.
And we are seeing him heat up significantly more than what we started with in the season. So we're trending in that direction, which is nice.
And he's 14 of 15 on the line, which means he's getting more aggressive. And so I'll go back to the conversation we had early in the year where it was, I credited my buddy Tim, who said he thinks he's just coasting because he knows what he needs to do to build up to the end of the year. And you're saying you're paying this guy $200 million. He needs to play like an all-star every night. He can't pick and choose his spots. But
that would be nice.
I do think that should be at least a little comforting. If he still looked right now the way he looked in most of November, I'd be extremely, extremely nervous. And I understand. I don't know why Nuggets fans are as nervous as they are, because when you have the best player and you've played well, like Joker's carried the team in years. He didn't have Jamal and MPJ. Last year, we know that they obviously came apart at the end, but you have to blame the depth and the coach's lack of confidence in it on that and overworking those guys. But the Nuggets are still one of the only 2 or 3 teams out of the West, pretty soon we are going to have to start talking louder about the Lakers and what they
I
can
hate it,
maybe
but
do.
yes, we will.
But I think that they might be the third team that you have to say, yeah, they're in the mix now to represent the West, because they got a guy who's just there before and another guy who went there 8 years in a row and is
Yeah.
one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think, the worry that I have is more just it feels like the constant problem that has really not gone away all season long has been the defense. They're my largest concern is, this offense, whatever offense this Nuggets team wants to commit to, it seems to be working for them. And I feel very confident in them doing whatever they've been doing in the playoffs and it working. But when you are going to meet teams in the West, you already know you're going to see them that live and die by the 3-point line. And we cannot defend the 3-point line to save our lives. That is where I get worried, is it's just going to be a shootout ultimately. But the Nuggets have a slight disadvantage because they're getting most of their points in the paint, not really living and dying by the 3. Now, what's really kind of what makes my head start spinning in circles is they can shoot the 3 as well. They can shoot at a very, very high clip from the 3-point line. So they have that in their bag of tricks. They can pull it out if they need to, but it's not nearly reliable enough to know that that's going to be a part of their game in the playoffs. To your point, Jamal Murray's going to heat up a little bit more. You can honestly assume MPJ will do the same because he was one of the most consistent offensive players in last year's playoffs until the Timberwolves series where they kind of found an answer for him. But ahead of that, he was playing really great offensively. So you kind of expect that from MPJ as well, for him to kind of maybe find some rhythm in the playoffs, but it's really the defense, BK. I think that's where most of the concern comes from. And I don't know, we talk about it all the time. Effort is a big part of defense. And so maybe it goes back to the conversation you and I had on Monday, which is some of this pacing themselves style of basketball intentional? Because they know, that this playoff run is not an easy one. They've done it before. They've gone all the way. They know how exhausting it can be. Is some of this just them kind of pacing themselves and not playing the defense that they're capable of playing because they don't want to push themselves there just yet?
So what's funny about that premise is if we were to ask Michael Malone that, he would tell us, or Joker for that matter, he would tell us that certainly there's no conversation about that because there just isn't.
Oh, definitely not.
I don't think MPJ and Jamal are at dinner going, okay, we just got to take it easy.
If I ever overheard that conversation, I'd be flying across the restaurant. I'm serious.
Russell Westbrook doesn't think like that.
Nope.
I saw where Ernest Griffin earlier said, why is it so hard for them to say that Jokic is ass on defense? This is not accurate. Okay. And here's the thing too. I need to talk to some of the Nuggets people about this, and I'll be over there. I doubt they practice tomorrow, but Friday for sure. I just don't have access to enough defensive numbers, but ESPN does, and they rated him 61 on defense in that new metric that they're using, which is a lot better than Cat and SGA and some of these other players. But this is just me speculating here, that some of why Joker looks like he's out of position on defense is because he's reacting to what he knows is about to happen. And so he ends up making a play or getting near where he thinks the play is going to end up because he knows every team's offensive sets and is telling them what they're supposed to be doing, like he did with the Timberwolves last year. I think that can put him out of position, but he doesn't get eaten alive by just about anybody. I get Valanciunas had 20 tonight, and our pal Jake LaRavia had 15, and they weren't all on Joker. But I'd be willing to bet that some of when it looks like he's not playing defense, and part of it may just be there are times where he's tired and can only do so much, so he's going to stay near the bucket. He can't help as much because he still has to carry the team on offense. So right. I'm not going to pretend like...
I certainly don't give Jokic enough credit for how many minutes he has played basketball since he's been in the NBA. I certainly do not give him enough credit because when he does play tired, I do get irritated, but I don't for a second remind myself, yeah, he is tired. He's played almost this entire game nonstop. So sorry to cut you off, but yeah, there is the element of probably just being exhausted.
Well, and some people thought he might have taken tonight off because with no Domas Sabonis, that maybe you say, okay, we've got enough for Valanciunas and LaRavia in the middle that we're not that worried about DeMar DeRozan, who did go nuts. I mean, he played almost the entire game, but 35 points, a big night, but you're not as worried about them. And kind of something that you brought up earlier about just doing your job. I mean, I guess I said it, but you kind of expounded on it. On nights you don't have Joker, or if you don't have Jamal, or I mean, they're kind of so used to playing without AG, but when you don't have guys, then that's when you have to do a little more, because you do have to step up for
Right.
whichever one of your main guys is missing, especially Joker. But that's only happened a few times all year. And so on those nights, it's different. But on the other nights, yeah, just do your job. And had he have taken tonight off, I mean, there's also a scenario where he could take Friday night off against Phoenix. I just don't think he will. He's just not wired. If he can play, if his body will let him play, then he plays. And he looked like he was, moving around slowly against Boston. Got a couple days off, went through his warm up today, and obviously felt well enough to play. What was his minutes? 38 minutes. So his normal workload. But I think that team defense does need to improve, but we know that they have that capacity. And having Peyton Watson back can only help. Having Aaron Gordon back, that's something we talked about, can only help.
Absolutely. And of course, so happy to have Peyton Watson back. You guys know I am a huge fan of his. I actually called his uncle the other night just to chat Nuggets basketball, because I can talk his ear off and he doesn't get super, super annoyed. I mean, if he does, he doesn't show it. So I'm going to pretend he doesn't get annoyed at all. But I love just kind of picking his brain about what's going on here? Are we feeling good about this? By the way, he is always so positive. He keeps me very level-headed. He's like, Liv, you're overthinking this. You just got to chill. Let the boys play ball. I'm like, okay, you're right. And usually he's 100% accurate and they end up winning the game and everything's fine. But I usually just need a little venting session there at halftime. I mean, today, I believe they had a 10-point deficit going into halftime. And then they kind of found a little bit of life. It felt like in the beginning of the second quarter, in the beginning of the fourth. And again, this goes back to what I say often on these post-game live reaction shows, which is what frustrates me about this team. And again, there is the element of pacing themselves or understanding that they're tired. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries, whatever it may be. Yeah, I'm not wrong for wanting my team to show up and play hard every single game. Sorry, I like good basketball. I like watching my team win, and I don't like watching them play with their food, because a lot of the times when they lose, they were very winnable games. They just didn't do the right thing. So I think what gets frustrating, BK, in these moments is you can see the moment this Denver Nuggets team chooses to turn on good defense. It's like, why? Why are we waiting and picking and choosing when we operate with good defense? Because what I worry about is this, we're going to turn it on. Oh, we're not going to turn it on. It's not creating good habits that just become, second nature. I don't want them to have to think about playing good defense. I want them to just be able to activate it in a 7-game series and not have to worry about it. So that would be my only issue with this whole on and off mentality, which I'm not saying they have it, but that's certainly how it appears sometimes that they have that mentality. That's what worries me about as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. How can I guarantee that in game 7, when it matters the most, you're going to be able to turn that switch on? That's where I get a little bit more worried than I probably should, but it's where my brain goes.
Well, going back to the conversation you and I had the other day on off court, and we've had this a few times, the idea that Russell Westbrook's effort is neutralized in the playoffs to some degree because of the intensity and because everybody plays hard. The other side of it is, and we didn't necessarily see it last year in those games against the Timberwolves, the three of the 4 losses were essentially blowouts in the first 2 at home. We haven't seen any games like that this year. The Nuggets have had some kind of gross losses or very winnable games, like you mentioned, but go back to Minnesota early in the year where they have the lead late. They've had the lead late in a few games that they've lost here in the last little while. The Washington game being the most disgusting of all the losses, just because of how undermanned Washington was and how you had no business losing that game, even if Jordan Clarkson looked like Michael Jordan. But that was
But the fact that we let him look like Michael Jordan is the problem.
for sure. But last year they were tired,
Yeah.
and we know that
That was very
and
clear.
obviously Jamal's banged up. But in a 7-game series, if they're as healthy as we think they can be, and I know that that's a long time between now and April 19th when the playoffs start, not that long, 5.5 weeks, 6 weeks.
So crazy.
That in a 7-game series, you're not gonna have to pick and choose your spots, and you're never gonna have a back-to-back. And you know how dumb the first round can be. You might have 2 or 3 days before your first couple of games because they want to try to get a few teams on Sunday, especially once the Lakers are in. You know they're
Mhm.
going to want LeBron and Luca on as many Sunday, Saturday games as possible. So I'm not as worried about the effort. When they talk about the breakdowns in communication, that's a problem. But also going back to last year, where they just didn't use the bench, you now are going to play Peyton Watson even more off the
Mhm.
bench. Obviously, Christian Brown takes KCP's minutes. You're going to play Russell Westbrook way more than you played Reggie Jackson, which
Yep.
is good for Jamal Murray's minutes. You're probably going to play Zeke Naji now more than you were going to. And that could be good for not only Joker, but for Aaron Gordon and DJ when they use them. So, I don't know why I'm losing my voice, but I clearly am.
I was gonna say mid-show, you just got like a total voice loss
Yeah,
there. That was
it's
crazy.
been, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But uh, that to me is less concerning than kind of the offensive conversation that we were
Yeah.
having. Not that they can't figure it out, but just in a league where everyone lives and dies by threes, there are going to be nights where they're going to have to make 12, 13, 14 threes to stay with the team that's probably going to make 17, 18, 19.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, looking ahead just a bit, and then we'll wrap things up, BK. Friday night's game against the Suns. The Nuggets are at home again. Sounds like you're gonna be at the game and help us get some coverage. You got to watch them in person in Indiana, as you mentioned, and then they're on a little road trip. On Sunday and Monday, back-to-back games against OKC. And the reason I'm looking so far ahead, and the reason I'm bringing that up, is I mentioned earlier, 21 games left. 15 of those 21 are against teams that are at or above 500. It is not going to get easier from here. And what I think the overall feeling from a lot of Nuggets fans is, yeah, they play really good against mediocre teams. What do we get from them when they're playing against contenders? OKC is very clearly a contender. So BK, in your opinion, we've watched the Nuggets compete against OKC. They lost to OKC early, and then without Jamal Murray, we saw Russ shine. They took down OKC. This will be the battles of the MVPs, and of course, the Nuggets will be traveling. It is back-to-back. It is on the road. What do you see those matchups looking like, considering OKC is probably posing the largest threat in the West right now?
I'd love to see them split it. We know how good they've been on back-to-backs, and so
Fingers
that maybe
crossed.
means Monday's better than Sunday. But I think it could go a long way. Metrics notwithstanding, we've now seen Joker have a bad performance against the Lakers. There's no other way to really characterize it, but certainly by
Yeah.
his standards,
Yeah.
and then come up short against the Celtics on ABC 2 weeks in a row, a Saturday night, a Sunday. And so now you're going to get another ABC game. I think that game probably tips at 11 our time on
It'll be
for the,
early.
yeah, for the second straight Sunday. He could do himself a lot. He and the team could do themselves a lot of favors by not only beating the Suns Friday, but beating the Thunder in that game, the first game on Sunday.
Set
Obviously,
the tone.
like to see him win both, but if they're able to do that, it reminds the league that, okay, there's a good chance, for as much fun as the Lakers are right now to the league and how well they've been playing of late, that this is the two best teams in the West. It has been all year. I understand Memphis was there and Houston, all
Yeah.
that, but nobody really believed that they're going to be in the conference finals necessarily, but that this is going to be the preview of the Western Conference Finals. And so I not only see them beat the Suns, but they're now one game below 500 against teams above 500 after the win tonight. Well, they need to, of course, build on that. And the Suns are under 500 because they've had such a rough stretch of late. They've dropped like 12 in a row or whatever it was, 10 or 12. So they're 4 games under now. But OKC is the most above 500 in the West. So you've got to win one of those, and if you could sweep them, then that starts changing power rankings and narratives next week. But it's hard to predict that you're going to go in and sweep them in back-to-back nights in their building.
Right.
But I like them
Especially without consistent defense for 4 quarters. It's going to
and
be
maybe they do have consistent D for 4 quarters because they know it's going to be kind of a playoff.
I'm hoping so. I
deal.
want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see it happen so that I can rest easy at night. Really quick, last thing. This is going to be a little fun thing for you. Remove contracts. Remove how much these players are making. Remove the loyalty. Remove any attachment or bias. Which what I really love about having BK on these post-game live reaction shows, everybody, is he is very knowledgeable in all things sports. And very knowledgeable in the Denver Nuggets. However, not necessarily a homer for the Denver Nuggets, which makes these conversations very fun because you guys know I can sit up
I've
here.
got my Steve Nash action figure.
There you
Although
go.
I am all out on Dallas now. So I
Oh
don't.
gosh, you have to be. They're just boneheaded
I can sleep.
people.
I can sleep well at night when the Nuggets lose. That doesn't really affect me like it does you. But I certainly am not. I feel bad for all my friends in Dallas. I hope all of them
You have
cancel their
to.
season tickets.
It's a nightmare.
But anyway, but to your point, yeah, and I was cutting you
Yeah,
off there.
so he doesn't relatively have the homer bias that I typically try to avoid when I'm doing these shows, but of course I will naturally have. So BK, set aside how much these players are making, who helped win a championship for Denver, all of that. Right now, based on performance, because I'm all about what have you done for me lately? I want to see it. I don't want to hear about it. I want to watch it. What does your starting 5 look like? Pretend everybody's healthy based on what you've seen over the last month. Based on what you've seen over the last month, build your perfect starting lineup for the Denver Nuggets that you think could help them really excel against teams above 500 and beyond in the playoffs.
So this season, because next season I would
This
like
season.
to have Kevin Durant as part of that. But
Yeah, me too. But this season.
I think, and this is gonna. Well, you could go one of two ways. And let's see where Aaron Gordon is. I'm not going to start the two guards together, and I'm not going to start Jamal Murray and Russ. I'm just not going to do it. And I don't think Michael Malone is either. I don't think he's in a hurry to. I think the only change that you would maybe see, and then he didn't do it tonight, and part of that I think is maybe kind of ego-driven. But even if you had Aaron Gordon back and he's rolling, and we've seen Aaron agree to
Take a step back. Yeah.
take a step back or come up the
Yeah.
bench, because we know it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And if you started Zeke Naji, you would get positive Zeke Naji minutes right away. You're not going to finish with Zeke Naji very often, but you might in place of MPJ or Peyton Watson, especially on nights he doesn't have it or if he's not bringing it defensively. And MPJ is going to understand that even more in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Or at least he did 2 years ago, and I think some last year. But I would start obviously Jamal, CB, MPJ. I'm still going to start Aaron Gordon as it stands now, and Joker. I'm going to go with your original starting 5. The only sub I would make, though, isn't Peyton Watson, like we thought maybe could end up becoming something. It's going to be Zeke Naji at the power forward, but I don't think they'll do that.
What's got to change with Michael Porter Jr.? What do you want to see different from him?
You just want to see consistency, and he's got to average 16 points a game, as silly as that sounds. But he's got to average 16 points a game.
And what about boards? A guy of his size, I feel like you could.
He's got to average a double, 16 and 9, 16 and 10.
I was going to say 8 to 10 boards to me feels like
he's
it's
under
the
8.
average.
If he's under 8 or under 16 with any kind of regularity, then you have to just shorten his minutes and make him go earn his playing time back.
There you go. I couldn't agree more.
Do you like that starting lineup, or would you do something different?
I do. I think, of course, that's where the emotion comes in for me, where I've got to let that go, is when MPJ is on, he's on. But right now, it feels like, there's that inconsistency has been pretty tough to watch and tough to deal with. But I guess maybe the only change I would make is potentially Russ over CB just for the sake of pace. And I do think that we see a little bit more effort and a little bit more of defensive awareness from Russell over CB. So that would maybe be interchangeable in my opinion. Not to say CB has not earned it. He absolutely has. I mean, I would love nothing more than to see him win most improved player. I am so thrilled with what he's been able to do as a starter, as a bench guy. I mean, he's done it all. Whatever the Nuggets have needed from him, he has showed up. But I would say that would be the only change I would potentially make, is having Russ in that starting lineup to increase the pace. And then also he's got that defensive awareness that I think CB can still work on. I think he's very coachable and he absolutely can fix that. But that would be the only interchangeable. Otherwise, I definitely agree with you. And I think while you've got a banged up Aaron Gordon, it is not a bad idea to have him come off the bench, run that second unit, and have Zeke Naji get some starting minutes, because we've seen him do it, and he's really playing very great basketball on both sides right now. But of course, you get a healthy Aaron Gordon back, he's good for some corner threes, which a couple seasons ago I would have been cringing watching him take that many threes. But right now, it'll be interesting to see what it looks like with him back in the mix, because again, it does make me wonder, when you get a healthy Aaron Gordon back, will you still get the same confident basketball from a Zeke Naji or a Jalen Pickett or whatever? I think we're starting to see, we've seen so many different versions of this Nuggets dynamic this year, because the starting five has looked different every week. Different players are out, different players are next man up. So they've had to be very vulnerable to adjustment this year, which I think only makes you stronger as a player and as a competitor, and it makes you more coachable. But it'll be very interesting to see, we'll check back in 2 weeks and see where the injuries are and where everybody's at consistency wise. But for now, I pretty much agree with you, outside of maybe Russ and CB doing some swaps.
Okay, but just to make sure, you are going to keep Joker in the starting lineup. Not Darius.
I've been that one's been weighing heavy on me. DeAndre
DJ.
Jordan might be. Yeah,
He's a vet. He's a vet.
Listen, you know what? To your point, though, you said, are we talking this year or next year? I am very excited. Nuggets fans, we have to hold on to the fact that DaRon Holmes still exists. I know it's hard to even fathom what that's going to be like.
I don't think he's taking Joker's job next year either, but just that he'll be able to contribute.
For sure. Definitely not. But I do think he will be helpful in the sense of kind of alleviating some of the pressure and the exhaustion that Jokic starts to feel around this time of the year. I certainly couldn't be playing 38, 40 minutes of basketball almost every, 3 times a week for months and months and months. I couldn't do it, but I'm also not getting paid millions to do it. So it's a little different for me. But
if you were getting paid millions, you would figure out how to do it. Like,
absolutely,
that's
I would.
Holding you back is that you don't have an NBA contract. So
I'm not going to make myself that tired for free. That's not happening. Are you kidding? Come on.
I mean,
goodness.
I got winded carrying my she's not even 40 pounds, 35-pound 4-year-old daughter up 2 flights of stairs from the basement to her bedroom.
Well, was she sleeping? Because dead weight is different.
Sure, but I should be able to handle 35 pounds going up 2 flights of stairs.
That is true.
And not be winded.
You got to get back in the gym ASAP.
No doubt. No doubt. I got to get my cardio up. I got to get my voice back.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, BK, first of all, for joining. And also thank you to everybody in the chat. We've got Corey, Mr. Exquisite Nugget, Jay, just to name a few. Polis. I named most of you guys at the top of the show.
Man, Brian's on there. I saw Brian.
Ernest,
he goes by Media Critic.
Yeah, we've got a lot of different people. Anthony Beck, I saw that you said hello. And then everybody I mentioned earlier, of course. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate your support, as well as just interacting with us throughout the show. You guys always bring up a lot of great points and a lot of great questions, and it makes it easier for us to discuss the game and the Denver Nuggets as they stand with you guys. So thank you guys. We'll have an off-court episode tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time, where at the top of the show, I'll do a little bit of discussing about the NBA as a whole, and then, of course, break down the Denver Nuggets. We'll probably play some of those post-game presser clips from Coach Malone and the other players that our Guerrilla Sports members are getting for you tonight. They will also be available on our YouTube, so subscribe to our YouTube and give us a follow on all things social over here at Guerrilla Sports. I'm Liv Moods. That's BK, and this is another Guerrilla Sports Off Court presented by Trusted American Mortgage. You can head to trustedamerican.com right now to see how they can help you save some money, getting you a better interest rate, lowering your monthly payments. Shout out to our friends over at Trusted American for all they do for you guys. Just check out trustedamerican.com. And BK, Thank you for joining me tonight. Go get some
Thanks,
sleep.
Liv.
And we'll be back. Yeah, off court tomorrow. Make sure you guys are tuning in, and we'll be back. BK will also be helping take us inside the Nuggets Suns. There's a lot of different games. Literally, all the rest of the season is going to be just making sure you guys are up to date on all things Denver Nuggets. So give us a follow on all things social. BK Denver Sports, right?
That's what it is.
There you go. So follow BK. I'm Liv Moods. And of course, follow Gorilla Sports. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Go Nuggets, and we'll see you very soon. Bye.